We are live, Ben. Ben, you're live on YouTube. Your audio. Here you go. You're on, Big Hoss.
Am I the only one on?
No, you're with me. We're waiting on Gary Collins. And I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. Hold on a second. Just making sure we are live on YouTube. Yes, we are live on YouTube at this very moment, Ben. Hey, Rock Breath. Here you go. You're on, Big Hoss.
Am I the only one on?
No, you're with me. We're waiting on Gary Collins. So many technical difficulties tonight, sir.
Well, God bless you, I say, for working them out. I couldn't have done it, and I'm very impressed that you did. I think it's great. I think we should have a round of applause for Judah.
You know what's amazing about technology? Sometimes it complicates things even more. And on that note, I want to welcome everybody that's listening to The World According to Ben Stein. It is our Saturday night special. We're waiting for our other guest, Gary Collins, because of technical difficulties on our part. He'll be a few seconds late. But I want to remind everybody, and I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcast. The numbers have been through the roof. It's been amazing, and we want to truly, humbly thank you all. We are being joined right now by Gary Collins, host and of the Simple Life now, and my mother's favorite guest. Or we top two.
Technical difficulties. Sorry.
We've been having technical difficulties, Gary. And my mom's listening. You're one of her two favorite guests. And I don't want to say who the other one is. But let's get right off the bat to everybody out there that's listening. We want to talk about the great lies by the left, the greatest lies by the left.
Sure. We don't have time for that. I'm 76 years old. We started now. We would not finish before I died.
Okay, so name me your top great leftist lie that is being perpetrated on the American public.
Right now, the one that's being perpetrated on the American public right now.
Yeah, we'll do first segment.
Okay, number one is going to get me fired, and excommunicated, and put in prison. But I'm going to say it anyway. It's that Kamala Harris is black. She's not black. She's not part black, except maybe a microscopic part, like how black I am, or how black you are, or how black Gary is. She's not black, and she's something dark, but she's not black. She's not African American. And the fact that they have managed to persuade people that she is, and therefore to acquire a huge block of the black vote, was what put them over the top and gave them the election. And that's a super fantastic lie. And that there was no voter fraud. I don't know. I would say that as a statistician, and a very well-educated one, if I may say so, I would say it's extremely unlikely that there was no hanky-panky. But I'd say extremely unlikely. But I'd say the other gigantic fraud is that spending all the money the Democrats are proposing to spend on education.
Okay, but no. Let's get to that next segment. You raised the Kamala Harris thing, Gary. What are your thoughts on that? Gary is but a statue right now because he's having technical difficulties.
Well, let me go on then with some others. The big Democrats.
No, go on. Just speak.
The Democrats are proposing throwing over $100 billion at the so-called education problem and if they solve that, they're going to make the economy revive, and they're also going to help the poor in America dramatically. The biggest myth of my recent life is that throwing money at the education problem is going to solve it. When I was a child, we didn't have computers. We literally didn't have air conditioning. And people learned to read, write, and do mathematics, including pretty high-level calculus in high school. And somehow, even now, the idea is because these kids are so effing incompetent, it's because we don't throw enough money at it. That's a big whopping lie. And I'm sorry.
Okay, Ben, so I'm actually shocked. No, you could speak for the full of whatever it takes, but I'm actually shocked by you saying that the Kamala Harris thing is the number one thing, the number one lie, because I'm shocked that you didn't say systemic racism.
Oh, you know what, Judah, credit where it's due. You're right. The lie that America is run on the basis of systemic racism is a whopping, giant, fantastic lie. Yes, absolutely, without question, for the great majority of the history of this great country, it was run on the basis of systemic racism. There's no doubt about that. But that stopped about very approximately 50 years ago. And since then, there has been a tremendous amount of favoritism towards African Americans. And that's fine with me. It's absolutely fine with me. But let's not hear about this reparations crap, because the black people in this country were slaves. They had been sold into slavery by their fellow blacks in Africa. They were brought here. They were horribly mistreated here. There's no doubt about that. The white race in America is right to be ashamed about that. But the black people in this country were freed by the white people fighting and dying to free them. That's never happened before in any other country, where the master race died in huge numbers to free the subjugated race. It's never happened before in human history. We did it in this country. We get no credit for it at all.
So lie number one, the great leftist lie, Gary Collins, systemic racism. What is your take?
Well, that's a good one, Ben. I agree. Define systemic racism too. And it's been said many times, if we're such a systemic racist country and that all we do is kill black and brown people and slaughter them in the streets, why are so many of those same people trying to get their way and sneak across the border to get into our country?
Right.
I just throw that out.
Right. Very absolutely right. I don't see much traffic going from Westchester County in New York to Senegal. I don't see many people dropping out of clubs, country clubs outside of Washington, D.C., filled with very wealthy Democrat lobbyists. I don't see many of those people dropping out and moving to some province in Mexico. I mean, what a total crock of crap that is, that this country is run on systemic racism.
I wouldn't mind, by the way, an exchange program. For all those that complain about systemic racism, we exchange them for people that want to come in because they believe how great the opportunities are in this country, Gary.
Oh, I'll gladly smuggle all those people into Mexico. No problem. All the congresswomen, senators, I'll take them right in the back of my truck right now, old school style. I'll empty out the gas tank for Pelosi and jam her in there. I mean, we'll do whatever we need to do to get them over there, because it's a very safe place.
The people of Southeast Asia, who are really, really seriously troubled by extreme poverty and disease, not to mention very bad climate, they will risk their lives to come here with nothing but their determination to succeed, and their next generation is at Harvard Medical School. And let's face facts. They're not getting favoritism. It's now been proved quite conclusively that the prestige Ivy League schools discriminate against Asians. Nevertheless, they manage to get over here, work their butts off, and become quite successful. Let's give credit where it's due, and let's stop these lies. Systemic racism is a tool dreamed up by Democrat politicians and pollsters to help them win elections, and it works.
But Gary, to this point, I know this bothers you in a sense because you've worked your way up from nothing. You know, you're a totally self-made, very successful man. And when you hear these things, it must bother you because you didn't have a leg up or a leg to stand on.
Well, and actually, I'm female today, so call me Gertrude instead today.
You're non-binary today.
Yeah, the biggest fallacy right now, I think one of them is, I never thought I would say this, getting kids back into the public education system. That our public education system cannot go and start up again because not all the teachers are immunized, even though they're being exposed to the least risky of all. But yet my Trader Joe's checkout person who is essential, the greeter at Walmart is essential, my truck, the person who comes and gets my garbage is essential. Yet We can't get a teacher in a classroom. I saw a video of a school that had been retrofitted. Every desk in the classroom had plexiglass to the ceiling. I mean,
Oh
it was
God,
ridiculous.
that's incredible.
Yeah,
Who's paying for
and
that?
they shot it for, it costs, I can't even remember. The school spent something like, the school district spent $40 million. And the teacher, this is a good one, probably one of the good ones. She gets in behind there and she goes, "Look at this crap. You can't hear the students. They can't hear her. They can't see her." And you're just going, our education system is bull. We need to get rid of the public education system, start it over from scratch, give choice. Our education system is broken, period. I mean, there's no fixing.
One person in public life, one person questioned the cost effectiveness of all these plexiglass barriers, Donald Trump. He questioned it in a debate with Mr. Biden. And of course, nobody paid any attention. And yet he turned out to be completely right. So, of course, that happens in so many parts of the political and educational landscape of America. Another gigantic lie that America as a government can spend unlimited amounts of money without any kind of economic consequence. That has never proven to be true. Yes, we can run deficits. Yes, we can run them for a long time. But infinite deficits for an infinitely long time has never worked ever without there being serious inflation. And I don't think Americans need or want inflation.
But I also want to bring up the both of you, because Gary, you just brought up a great point about the plexiglass, because now I'm like thinking America's going to look like a liquor store. You know, it's going to look like like all around us, like we're shopping, like we're going into a liquor store. And it's Joe Biden was at Pfizer at the facility, and he said even after getting a vaccination to wear a mask. So why get a vaccination? Why? I mean, these lies. I mean, these absolute lies. But that we'll get to in another segment. I wanted to bring up one quick story about Rush Limbaugh. What I believe one of the big things that made him famous in the beginning, I could be wrong, was that he offered to send all the homeless people on a bus to Malibu when Martin Sheen was the mayor. And,
please don't do that, because I live in Malibu. Part of the year.
Was it Martin Sheen that was the mayor? I believe it might have been Martin.
I don't even want to. No, Malibu's a terrible place. You don't want to go anywhere near there, please. It's horrible. Don't go anywhere near there. It's awful. It's terrible.
What about Sandpoint, Idaho?
Please don't go anywhere near there. It's like the Gestapo is running the place, and you don't want to go anywhere near. Stay away from. Stay away from Sandpoint, Idaho. Stay away from Malibu. Stay away from Beverly Hills. Stay away from the Watergate co-ops and apartments in Washington, D.C. Stay away from all those places. They are deadly. Stay well away from them, please.
What about where Gary lives?
I don't know where Gary lives.
We would no, that wouldn't happen. Trust me, there would still be no homeless people. Sorry.
So Gary, for a second, I'm going to go to break, but I want you to think about your what you think is one of your great leftist lies. But if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. We're live on YouTube, and I am reading the chat, and it's quite funny. I want to thank everybody for listening and remind everybody to go to. You could pretty much go to any streaming podcast site and download our episodes. We've been getting them in droves, and just tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody, download The World According to Ben Stein. We're quirky, we're weird, we're an eclectic
non-binary.
But yeah, we're non-binary. Ben, in my wildest dreams, Ben Stein, I've known you for 17 years. I never thought you would be the word non-binary would be coming out of your mouth.
I am non-binary. I'll see you. I'm going to be in an hour from now.
But welcome back to The World According to Ben Stein. Leftist lie, the greatest leftist lie to you, Gary.
That climate change is imminent.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Or that's man-made.
It's been imminent. It's been imminent my whole life. Since I've been a kid, it's been imminent. And trust me, I'm a redneck hippie. I firmly believe we're doing damage to the earth. I think we're doing some damage to the climate, but the end of the world is not coming off climate change, off man-made climate change. Now, could a meteor hit us and take us out? Absolutely. Could a couple natural disasters happen all over? Yes. But the fact that we are going to literally destroy the earth in the next 5 years and it's going to implode is complete, utter nonsense. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the green energy deals. They are nothing but money laundering operations for their buddies. Green energy works. I use it. I know it works. I know its limitations also. You got to have all the above. You got to use them all. Fossil fuel, and
we just saw its
I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
In the great state of Texas, where they kicked oil and gas, even though they're overflowing with oil and gas, they kicked oil and gas out of a large part of the electricity producing mechanism of the state. Instead, they put in wind and solar. And so when it froze, the gears of the wind power and solar power wind power things didn't work. They were frozen up, and there was no wind, so the wind power things didn't work for that reason. Also, it was overcast, so there was no solar power going through, and so people died, literally died. Little children died in their beds from freezing because of the environmentalists trying to save them. It's unbelievable. And by the way, I'm as old, I'm sure, as you and Judah put together, and I can vividly recall, when the newspapers and magazines were full of stories of how we're approaching a new ice age.
Well, that was in the 70s, right? Time magazine, actually.
50s and 60s.
Right. I thought I could have sworn in the 70s Time magazine had.
I could be wrong. I'm awful
but
wrong.
Also, Ben, one of the things that bothers me is a constant thing of how bad we are. Right? How tremendously bad we are. So I want to go back to the 50s, right? When people used to drive on the highways and just throw everything out of the car.
Yes,
right?
I remember that very well.
You would take the garbage, you would just chuck it out of your car. We had no seat belts. There was nothing. And we have progressed, America, more than any other country known to man. We care about other countries. We donate more money to other countries, to poverty, to all these different things, Ben. And it's tiring listening to how bad we are.
I'm tired of having our leaders tell us how bad we are. And why is it that decade in, decade out, we're told by the Democrats how bad we are? They've had a lot of presidents and Congresses in that time. Why haven't they made us better? And why aren't they better? I mean, what do they mean by better? There's more opportunity in this country for a poor kid coming from nowhere to get something done with his life or her life or non-binary life, that doesn't happen anywhere else but in America. There's a reason why everyone in the world wants to come to America. It's not just that we have the best pizza; it's that we are a society of opportunity. That is not the same as a systemic racism society of oppression.
Gary?
I don't know what to add to that. He's totally right. No, but I agree. It's don't get me wrong. We have our problems. We definitely have our problems. And you know what our problems are? Big, greedy businessmen and politicians. That's our problems. So, we need to figure out how to solve that. And politicians,
Sir, Gary, my dear friend and colleague, we're not going to solve that. It's part of the human nature to be greedy. That's human nature.
Yep.
That's not going to be solved. Although, if the government were serious about it, there's a lot they could do to clamp down on corporate greed. I spent a large part of my life being an expert witness in class action securities cases in which management of companies were looting the companies blind, were robbing from their own shareholders on an insane scale. And the government just didn't do a thing, not a damn thing. And this went on for decade after decade after decade. And I think it's still going on. Nobody's stopping them. That's the nature of humans. And why doesn't the government stop them? Because the guys and gals, of course, and non-binary in the government who should be stopping them want to get jobs with them and make lots of money when they get out. Money is a huge, huge motivating force.
It's funny because Gary and I were speaking about this last week, and we were saying, if you look at the amount of money people have made in office, Ben, I mean, you look at Nancy Pelosi being worth $140 million that we know of. You look at Harry Reid's, going into the Senate with pretty much nothing, walking out with a net worth of $65 million. not to mention Mitch McConnell's net worth with his wife. And this goes across the board. And we're constantly talking about lobbying, like when people leave, they become lobbyists. Sometimes I think they just didn't have the talent to do it while they were in government, that their next job is to become a lobbyist. I mean, it's insane, Ben.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, famous president, Senate Majority Leader for a long time before that. He entered office on a salary of $12,500 a year. That was how much they got paid. He managed to get the FCC to give him broadcast licenses for nothing that made him one of the richest men in America while he was still in the Senate, before he even became vice president and then president. That's what they can do. There's no limit to their greed and self-dealing. That's the nature of humanity. But let's not have you tell us how much better you are than we are. Let's just shut up about how great you are. Let's just say the ordinary person is greedy. We'll try to stop it. I used to work for class action lawyers, a lot of them, and they're greedy and they're aggressive and they're very, very, very smart. But the system of class action litigation, which all the big powers that be on Wall Street hate, is a brilliant system because it sets the greed of the trial lawyers against the greed of the corporate insiders as two very greedy groups of people going at each other. And to some extent, they stalemate each other and less gets stolen. That's a brilliant system, but we don't have that anymore. That's pretty much been stopped.
But Gary has brought up a great point. I don't know if you brought it up tonight. Somebody just brought it up in chat, but Gary brought up with me at least, is term limits.
I don't like them. I don't like them. May I tell you why I don't like them?
Yeah, and then I'll have Gary respond.
Please do. Being a government leader is a very complicated job. It's really, really difficult. It's really, really, really difficult. The government is a huge enterprise. It employs a large number of people. It has astounding responsibilities. It takes a very long time to learn how it works. You cannot expect people to learn how it works in 2 Senate terms or even in 3 Senate terms. They should be really experienced. And the days long ago when we used to have the Senate filled with forever serving Southerners, those guys knew how government worked. I'm sure some of them were crooked. I'm positive they were, but they knew how government worked and they were able to do some things right. Today's modern people, like that moron AOC, she knows nothing. And so yet she's become terribly important just as a publicity machine.
Well, Ben, she was attacked. She almost lost her life during the insurrection, the closest thing to 9/11.
Right.
Even though she wasn't even in the same area. She wasn't in the same area, but she almost died.
I know.
It's weird how
I know. She has suffered terribly.
But Gary, I want to hear your counter to that, because I mean there are, listen, people like to forget, Ben, that there were 6 senators. Wasn't it the 6 senators that almost all got indicted or arrested in the 80s with the Keating 7? I mean, so
I think they were called the Keating 7 because maybe there were 7 of them.
No, I'm talking about the senators, not the Keating. Was it 7 senators?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Keating, my bad. I just learned something new. So the Keating 7. Well, Charles Keating might have been one of them, but he wasn't a senator.
No.
It was John.
And by the way, Keating was just an errand boy for Michael Milken, and Michael Milken was the boss. He was pulling all the strings. He's my neighbor, so to speak, and he's incomparably richer than I am. But I give him credit. Let's give Milken credit. He left. He went to prison. He didn't rat out anyone. He went to prison. He did hard work in prison, teaching other people how to do mathematics. He came out, he started a foundation, did a lot of work on prostate cancer, did very good work. So there is some possibility of redemption for human beings.
And Gary, this is the kicker to the story, and everybody on YouTube, this is the kick that's listening on the podcast. So Ben helped was a part of bringing down Michael Milken.
Very large part. And Ben got invited. Ben doesn't go to parties, really. He rarely goes to many invitational type things. I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that. I'm not a convivial person.
Ben got invited to Michael Milken's going away party, and he went. And what did somebody say to you at the party?
Well, it was a very, very famous entrepreneur in Las Vegas, Mr. Wynn, he said, "I'm surprised to see here. You're not exactly the most popular person in the room." And I gave him credit for saying that to me. And I didn't stay much longer than that. I didn't want to die. But no, I think, with all due respect, that Milken is a story of some kind of redemption and change. Maybe I don't know enough about him to know, but
No, I think you're right.
I think.
But getting back to Gary's point, Ben, you don't think being in there for 50 years is a little too long?
No, I do not. I think the longer they're in there, the better. And I'd like them in there a long time, and I'd like them to really learn what they're doing. On the other hand, you have people like Mr. Sanders, who've been in there a very long time, started out as a complete jerk and traitor to America, just as an opinion, not a legal conclusion, and still is. So there's some people who can be in there a long time and never learn anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see it from both sides, but I hear Gary's point. I mean, there are some people, Ben, that have been in there. I mean, who is that guy? The one that was from Michigan, right? I mean, Ben, it's almost like people pass it down to their family members, right? Debbie Dingle.
He did pass it on, and right. I knew Dingle, and Dingle was not a bad guy. He was an arrogant, crabby guy, but he knew his stuff. And he got a lot done. He got a hell of a lot.
But my point is, we're not a pass down the seat to your wife or a husband, even if it's a Republican with Sonny Bono passing it on to Mary Bono. I mean, this is just this is a form of oligarchy almost.
No, but maybe that works. I mean, there was a reason why in the English system, for many centuries, they had a House of Lords. It wasn't just so those guys could get away from their wives for a few days each month. It was because they knew something useful about the running of the government.
Gary, jump in.
Yeah, nepotism. I mean, I saw it firsthand. And I'll tell you right now, I worked, as a federal agent, had to learn military intelligence, went through multiple academies, had to learn all kinds of crap. By the time, after 5 years as a federal agent, I had it pretty much figured out. It's not rocket science. The state, I would say max it out at 8 years, 8 to 12 years, and you're done. That's it. No more. Because what we're seeing right now, where I love is people go, Bernie Sanders, the outsider. Bernie Sanders he never made 50 cents outside of the government because the guy was a loser.
Binary or non-binary?
I don't.
Have you thought about that? Maybe the problem with him was that he was non-binary.
Well, it was because
against him. Just like this systemic racism is nothing compared to the oppression of the non-binary people of this country. That's real oppression.
Well, if you saw his mittens, I would say non-binary. You know what I mean? But yeah, I honestly, you got to do your time and get out. I had mandatory retirement. We could only do so much time in the government.
We lost you.
I think you've been frozen. You've been frozen out now by the Federal Communications Commission. Now you can go on.
I know I'm having technical difficulties.
We're listening to your brother.
This is Gary. You're proof positive of living off the grid. Sometimes you do need a grid system around you.
I'm actually on the grid right now. It's just.
We are.
Whatever grid you're on.
We are the grid. We are the grid.
Gary, whatever grid you're on, it needs an upgrade in the system.
We are the grid. We are the grid.
Are you back with us, Gary?
Yes, he is.
I can hear you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to welcome everybody back to the world according to Ben Stein, or I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. I am reading your comments. They are great in the comment section on YouTube. I want to remind everybody to download our podcasts. Tell your friends, tell everybody, please just download your podcast. We're joined by Gary Collins tonight, partially Gary Collins from Gary, I can never remember what it's called, The Simple Life.
TheSimpleLifeNow.com, where all my best-selling books and everything, including myself, is housed. All right.
Okay, and of course, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. But this is my big leftist lie, which is BLM. We were joking before.
Oh my God, that's so right. Oh my God,
of other things to call it, like bacon, lettuce, and mayonnaise. or whatever you want to call it, because
mayonnaise is white, Judah. Don't do it.
But Ben, you had posted on Parler today a great story about a soccer player, Lyle Taylor in Europe, who's I believe he's black, I believe he's African American, decided to say this is all BS. He read their
I've
charter.
been writing about this for a long time. The idea, the BLM is founded on a gigantic super lie, which is that the blacks who are killed in this country are mostly killed by white cops. That's a complete lie. The overwhelming 90% of the blacks who are killed in this country are killed by other blacks. And that's sad. And it's really awful that there is so much violence in the black community. It's really, really, really sad. It's really, really, really sad. It's heartbreaking. I don't know what to do about it, but it is not the white policeman's fault. It is not the white policeman's fault.
No, but he called out, Ben and Gary. He called out there are a few black. I want to say they're Marcellus Wiley, who works for ESPN, who's a commentator, and Jason Whitlock, who have called out BLM for their approach to the family, for the family dynamic thing that they don't think is important, for their socialist ideas that they think are out totally crazy. But there's one athlete now who just refuses to, and Gary, who refuses to kneel anymore. He's like, this is garbage. BLM is just based in fantasy and law.
Well, black people are not idiots. I mean, they'll see through this con job all the time. I mean, everybody eventually sees through a con. It takes a long, long time. But eventually everyone will see through Black Lives Matter, and it'll be a joke. Black Lives Matter will be a comic punchline.
And I was just told, Gary and Ben, by somebody in our YouTube chat how much BLM was given last year, and is the sum of $20 billion. No,
20 what?
$20 billion.
No, that's impossible. That's not possible. That's not possible. I'm sorry, but that's not possible. That is not possible. I'm sorry, whoever told you that, God bless him or her, or non-binary, but that's not possible.
So to whoever posted that, if you could please send us the link.
It's not possible.
Send us the link to where you got that from. But either way, Gary, this BLM myth, this BLM thing has literally ruined and wrecked the landscape of all forms of entertainment in our country. You can't watch it and sports. Well, entertainment, right? You can't watch a baseball. Gary, you're a big sports fan, as am I. It's just absolutely brutal.
Oh, the NBA, I couldn't even stomach. I mean, it was so bad. I haven't liked the NBA for a long time. Probably, I was a big Laker fan, and honestly, I hated Kobe. Didn't like him. I hate LeBron James even worse. Talk about two just egocentrical idiots that, all you do is play basketball. Shut up.
And you're incredibly well paid for it, so shut up.
Yeah, just shut up and play basketball. I don't need to hear your brilliance of how you didn't go to college and now you're a great businessman because you started off with a couple $100 million and I just head explodes, as a guy who used to play it on a beat up basketball court with beat up Converse, Chuck Taylors as a kid, and that's all we could afford. And we played it for fun and passion. And I got some idiot who makes over $100 million a year telling me how the world works. It's just with Black Lives Matter on both end courts. It's awesome.
Yeah, but sir, Gary, it's even worse than that, because they're not just telling us that we're bad people. They're telling us that we're killers. They were killers, and that the policemen, many of us are related to policemen. Someone in our household is married to a sheriff's deputy here in Los Angeles, that they're killers. And that's insane. They're protecting Black people. The great majority of the work that the police and sheriff's deputies do here in our beloved Los Angeles is protecting Black people from other Black people and brown people from other brown people.
We'll just ask those liberal cities how that defund the police went.
Yeah, exactly.
How
did it work in Minneapolis?
Yeah, how'd it go there? It's not going so well.
Well, the funny thing is they're trying to get those policemen back, or policemen, and why would it? the non-binary group, why in God's name would any of them go back?
No
I mean,
way.
I got to be honest. I love the police. You know, the LA Police Department sometimes is a little whatever, but I love the police. Who in their right mind would want to be a cop these days? Who in the? I mean,
a person who is a real patriot and is really devoted to
yeah.
saving human life, and a person who should be honored for it, not cussed out for it.
Gary, in hindsight, if you were to have started your career today, you've served this country for over 20 years. Would you have done the same thing, knowing the repercussions?
Yeah, I'm an idiot. I would do it all over again.
That's great.
And you know,
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Well, the thing too is I believed in what I did. I'm proud of what I did. The problem was, for me, it made me who I am today. Without all those experiences and understanding how the government worked and law enforcement worked, I wouldn't be able to talk and discuss the topics and do what I do today, which is help people avoid a lot of the pitfalls of the life of the consumer nation we're in today. I needed this. I had to follow this path to get here. So I would hate to go back and take a different path, because then who knows? Who knows where I end up? I could be in a hotel room with a needle sticking out of my arm for all I know.
That's the best point you brought up. When they knock certain jobs, right? There's always that old parable they love to show in movies, Ben Stein, the thin line between a criminal and a cop, right? It's something they love to do. It's in many movies, right? And Gary has a point. Gary could have gone one way to the world, to the dark side, or he went to the light, which was protecting our country. And that's a real important point.
Absolutely. And there's those people deserve a lot of credit for it. Instead, they get cursed out, and the people on Wall Street and in Hollywood making jillions of dollars for fun jobs where they get to have sex with young girls. They get praised and get medals.
But I remember when Obama said, those people that cling to their gods, their guns, and their religion or whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, imagine all the people in prison if they would have found God before they went to prison.
Yes, well put.
And sadly, the God that many of these people are finding in prison isn't exactly the peaceful religion. The irony that you're finding Allah in prison is and going on a peaceful path. I gotta be honest.
I love this theme. I have to leave, and when I say, "Hey Judah," I have to leave and do something vital for my little family. But God bless you. We'll be back very soon in a couple of days.
You missed the cue, Ben. It was just to say Judah.
I beg your pardon. What was the cue? It was to say Judah.
Judah. But we do have to cut the show short tonight. We thank everybody. Gary, you'll be on hopefully on Tuesday night joining us again. Ben's got to go really fast. I want to thank everybody for listening to The World According to Ben Stein.
Keep going. Judah, just keep going. What do you got? Gary, what's your next question?
You know what? Hold on a second. Let me see if I could do something here so we don't have to leave so quickly, because people love hearing from just you, Gary Collins. I'll put them in the waiting room. I'm going to
ask me a question. Ask me anything.
Ask Gary Collins anything. We will go on for 5 more minutes, but if somebody actually did bring up an interesting point, by the way. They said it was 10.6 billion, and Gary, the banks were giving 2.5 billion. So Bank of America gave Black Lives Matter 2.5 billion. So
I got a very good story with that. Yes. Bank of America. I learned when I grew up, Bank of America was the only bank in my little town. So at 5 years old, I think it was called something else, and then it became Bank of America. So I banked with them as a little kid on. When I got into law enforcement, I found something very interesting about Bank of America, that it's a complete, utter, corrupt institution. And don't take this the wrong way, every illegal alien I arrested banked at Bank of America. 100% of them. 100% at the beginning of my career, every one of them had a Bank of America ATM card. They had credit cards. And I remember I called bank. I got so frustrated at one point. I called Bank of America because this one individual, this illegal alien, was on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, was getting food stamps. I mean, was just killing it, and had a mortgage through Bank of America and full blown illegal fake identity, the whole bit. And I finally go, hey, do you guys? I call up and I go, give me the VP of the branch. Have a talk. I go, I keep running into this over and over again. I go, they're not even.
By the way, that's because EDD is with Bank of America. I mean, that's a big reason. But Gary, what state did you settle in? And Gary, where should I buy land off the grid right now?
Anywhere but where I'm at. I'm actually going to be transitioning again. I'm building the summer house or winter house right now. Been a dream of mine, but I'm probably going to transition into another state. For people who, it depends. I always tell people it depends on you. What is your belief system? What is a topography you like? What climate do you like? Those are the factors you have to put in. For me, I don't like cold weather, but I like the mountains. I grew up in the mountains. So I split my year. I live half the year in the mountains. I live half the year now in warm weather. So I live in warm weather all year long. I'm no dummy for the most part. But, if you're into, you're a big Second Amendment advocate, Montana, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, you can't go wrong with those. North, South Dakota. Texas is interesting because it's pocketed. I would move anywhere but probably Austin, San Antonio. Those if you're, those are goofy. Not that they're bad. I've been to both of them many times.
Somebody asked Florida/Texas ?
Okay. Texas, you have to go. It's my preference. I spent a ton of time in Texas in the federal government. There were places I liked and there were places I didn't like. You need to go research the areas and figure out what's best for you. I'm a small town guy. I like small towns. It's not busy. There's no traffic. People tend to be more honest because you see them every day. There's people here where I'm at right now. I see almost every single day without even meaning to. Changes the dynamic of how you act. Florida, I spent a lot of time in Florida too. For me, Florida, the biggest problem with Florida was the weather. It's just, I sweated out of every orifice known to man by 8:30 in the morning at times. The humidity was just brutal. And I spent a lot of time there. I'm not opposed to Florida. Florida's a good place to go. But if you got to be ready for humidity and hurricanes. And that's the bottom line.
That's Gary's weather political landscape of where to move to. Because Rock Breath is a huge supporter of us. He's going to be going on the road next year. He's going to be pretty much.
Is he RVing?
He's going to be. I think he's going to be RVing. I think he's just going to be traveling the country with his wife. And there is something extremely romantic about it, but there's also part of the country where you might not want a road trip through.
Oh, I've been to many places that I should not have been in. You get lost, you end up on the wrong street, wrong neighborhood. But again, it's individual. That's the great thing about the United States. We have 50 states. So you can go in different places and kind of figure out what you like. I always tell people visit it first. Don't buy sight unseen. A lot of people are doing that right now. But what you want to do too is you want to make sure it's a climate socially that you fit into. I always test the places out before I move there to see how the people are, because it can be paradise to you and then the people are a bunch of douchebags.
Okay, so if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. Ben had a run for the moment, but we are here with Gary Collins from Simple Life Now, who talks about living off the grid and all of these things. And you had a question from somebody. God, and it just, what about San Francisco? That was the, how do you like San Francisco? And most surprising thing you found in the federal government, Gary?
You know what? Actually, I spent a lot of time in San Francisco too. I had good friends in college who ended up living there, and I think some still do. They unfortunately they don't talk to me very much because I'm not woke enough, and that stuff kind of happens. But I love San Francisco as a city. I had a great time in San Francisco. Matter of fact, I don't think I ever had a bad experience for the
Well,
most part.
but Gary, what's the most surprising thing you saw in federal government?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wouldn't live there though. Oh, probably the ineptitude of the people, the leaders. That was the most shocking to me because I worked in the civilian sector too, because I started working at a very early age. And I even worked in technology before I went back in the government. So I was out of the government in the military, had a break, was in the technology field, then went back into the federal government as an agent. That was the most shocking part to me was I just couldn't figure out how some of these people became bosses. They were so completely grossly incompetent as human beings. I was floored. I thought I was just getting bad bosses at one point in my early career. Then by the time I had left, I realized, no, they're all idiots. It had dawned on me. I went, no, it's not that I'm just finding the bad ones. Most of them are bad. We used to have a saying, shit floats to the top in the government. And it was pretty much true.
And on that note, Gary, we're gonna check out because your sound is a little kooky and it's starting to fade again. And before you absolutely fade out and go fully off the grid, I want to thank everybody that's been listening tonight to The World According to Ben Stein. Ben did have to leave a few minutes early, but Gary is the man. Men want to be like him and women want to be with him. Gary, I just gave you the tagline for your next book.
I was gonna say I need to write a book. That's the title right there.
The Gary Collins story, the real Gary Collins, not the guy from the 70s and 60s that would appear on Love Boat quite often. But I want to thank everybody and remind everybody to download our podcast. The World According to Ben Stein is pretty much on every single place you could download something. So if you're anti-Apple, I would imagine one of those is friendly to us. So please download us. Gary, where can people download your stuff? Your amazing podcast.
TheSimpleLifeNow.com is the home of Gary Collins. Everything I sell, everything I do, my podcast, everything is there. Please go there. I'm a small business owner. Support your small businesses.
And it is an amazing podcast. I want to tell people, download Gary's podcast, do ours first, but download his second. It's an amazing podcast. I want to wish everybody a great rest and happy, healthy weekend. To my mother and father that are listening at home, I'm so glad my mother's a little healthier today. I love you guys, and I love all of you guys for listening and supporting us. It means the world to us. I want to welcome everybody back to Parler at Ben Stein on Parler. And it's up. It's a little glitchy. It's going a little goofy. Gary, you're up on Parler. Have a great rest of the weekend, everybody. Have a great night. We will see you Tuesday night for a full hour, I promise. And Gary will be back. We will see you then.